Hello everyone, welcome to Legacy S Academy. Welcome to this video where we are talking about a controversial issue and a controversial move that was done by China in the 19th Asian Games that China is conducting. See, what's happened in the diplomacy or the international relationship is that we usually try to de-escalate the relationship or de-hyphenate the relationship. De-hyphenate the relationship in the sense the difficulty or disturbance that is caused to one country by the other country for any specific reason. For example, India and Pakistan have disputes with respect to the boundary and also the internal security. Okay, so because we have the disputes with respect to boundary and the internal security, we won't disrupt our trade. We won't disrupt our people to people contact. Okay, so that keeps happening, but we will deal with this specific issue in a very isolated way, and we won't let that this disturbance is affecting our other issues. So this is what is called as de-hyphenate the relationship. Okay, so but in a very unique and uncommon situation, China did something with respect to the 19th Asian Games that China is conducting, where in the sports we have an issue of politics. Okay, this is called as politicizing the sports. Okay, so what happened? Let's look at the context. What happened? See, China is conducting the Asian Games. China is hosting the Asian Games. That is the 19th Asian Games. Correct. So, and this Monday, that is, we're talking about 25th September 2023, has been a very good day for us because we have already won 10 medals, including 1 gold, 6 bronze, and 3 silver medals. So, again, we're hoping for more medals in this 19th Asian Games. But the good things aside, if we talk about bad thing that happened with respect to the 19th Asian Games that's being conducted in China, is that what did China do? Couple of days back, China barred 3 athletes. Basically from the Arunachal Pradesh from entering China or taking part in this 19th Asian Games. These three athletes were participating in a Chinese Kung Fu competition, and they had got all the required documentation from the Indian government side. So whatever the Indian government had to do from the Ministry of Sports, so all the documentation was ready, and they had got something called as stamped visa. They did not get stamped visa. Apart from that, they got a very temporary kind of visa for their movement to China, and this was disrupted. And the Chinese authorities, it said that the Chinese authorities had advised the airlines not to board these 3 athletes, and so that they cannot take part in the 19th Asian Games. So this is a context and a very controversial move by China because it barred the athletes in taking part from the 19th Asian Games. So this is an issue that we're talking about in the politicizing the sports. This is what happened. China denied visas to 3 athletes, especially from Arunachal Pradesh. And all these 3 athletes were participating in a competition called as Chinese Kung Fu, and they had got all the documentation required from the Indian government, but the Chinese authorities stopped them from entering China. Okay, so this is what is politicizing the sports. So why is China actually doing this? What is the dispute that China has with respect to India? See, the India-China dispute dates back to decades together, and the first dispute starts in the year 1962. If you remember, in the year 1962, when Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister, before the year 1962, we have one more event, that is in the year 1954, where Jawaharlal Nehru signed Panchashil principles with China. Okay, so after signing the Panchashil principles with China, Jawaharlal Nehru was very, very sure that no matter what, China will not attack India. Okay, no matter what, China will not attack India. It was during this time, after signing the Panchashil principles in the year 1954, it was during this time that the Nehru came out with a slogan, that is Hindu Chini Bhai Bhai. Okay, which means though we are neighbors, we are very strong. Okay, our people to people contact, our cultural contact, our economic trade and relationship is really great. That's what the Jawaharlal Nehru believed till 1962. So in the year 1962, in the month of October, the late 1962 we are talking about, during the month of October and the November, China invaded the Arunachal Pradesh, invaded the Arunachal Pradesh, and India was not at all ready for the war, because the Indian authorities thought that there is no point in building up the weapon system or the military along the borders between India and China, because China will never ever attack India, because we don't have a dispute. Okay, but the China thought we have a dispute, though in Aksai both in Aksai and also in the Arunachal Pradesh. What actually China did in the 1962 war was something that we'll have to know. China had built a very important road. China had built, this is the Aksai area. China had constructed a road in the Aksai area without taking the permission of India. So this is we consider this part of India as a very integral part to us. Okay, and this when China built a road connecting its provinces, that is Xinjiang province to Tibet, when it built a highway, India was not even taken into consideration. So this was the first event that led to the disputes between India and China. So following this, we had the 1962 war that happened between India and China. And even in the year 1965, if we talk about, Pakistan had donated a small patch of land to China, and Pakistan was hoping that the China will attack India in support of Pakistan. Okay, so this continued even in the year 1971. So from then on, it's just like my enemy's enemy is my friend. So on the same lines, Pakistan very strongly considers that the China is an adversary to India, and at the same time, Pakistan and China can collaborate to isolate India in the Asia and also in the world affairs. So this is the reason, this is a historic relationship, historic dispute that the India and China share together. Clear? So basically we have border problems with China in our western part, in the central part, and also in the eastern part. When I tell you western part, it is the Aksai. Okay. When it is central part, it is Sikkim. When I tell you about the eastern part, it is Arunachal Pradesh. Okay. So this is about the historic relationship between India and Pakistan. Sorry, India and China. So now, what happened in the recent past? If you look at some of the disputes between India and China in the recent past, these are very important things that we can note. Starting from the One Belt One Road initiative, that is OBOR. Okay, so this is called as the revival of the Chinese Silk Route by China. China classifies this to be one of the most important strategic and also the largest project that China has ever conducted in the last 60 to 70 years. So because of the OBOR, One Belt One Road initiative, but is also called as BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, China wants to connect Asia, Middle East and Europe. Okay, so China wants to build a connectivity infrastructure, though it might be road, it might be railways, it might also be the waterways or the shipment. So China wants to build the connectivity from Asia, from Chinese borders to the Europe. Okay, so that is called as OBOR. So where is India concerned with all this? So when as a part of the OBOR, China is executing a project called as CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Okay, starts from a port called Gwadar in Pakistan and moves through the Gilgit-Baltistan region of Kashmir to enter the Xinjiang province of China. So when China is conducting this particular construction of the road through the Gilgit-Baltistan region, and the Gilgit-Baltistan region are an integral part of Kashmir, that's what we believe, and India was not at all considered, India was not taken into consideration at all in the execution of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So this is a dispute that started in the year 2015-2016 when China announced OBOR and also announced CPEC without taking India into consideration. Okay, it is just like someone is coming into your house and asking you to evacuate your house without your permission. That's what China did, technically speaking. So as a part of the OBOR, China is doing one more that is called as string of pearls. So it is very much said in the diplomacy that the one who controls the Indian Ocean will control the entire world going forward. Okay, this is what people believe. So China wants to have control over the Indian Ocean. So China is following something called as predatory economics and having its military base along the Indian Ocean. So in the Horn of Africa, there's a country called Djibouti, and China has their military base in Djibouti. And Gwadar, as I told you, is a part of CPEC. Okay, in Pakistan, China has the control over Gwadar port. And coming to Sri Lanka, in Sri Lanka there's a very strategically placed port near Colombo called as Hambantota. Hambantota has been leased to China for the next 99 years. So China can have their military operation happening, China can dock its submarines, China can dock its missiles in the Hambantota for the next 99 years because Sri Lanka has leased this particular port to China. And China also has deep connections in Bangladesh, that is Dhaka, and China also has a military base in the capital city of Myanmar, that is Pyongyang. So if you look at all these places, Pyongyang, Dhaka, Hambantota, Gwadar, okay, and the Djibouti. So all these 5 strategically placed locations along the Indian Ocean. Okay, so India classifies this as a string of pearls. So what China is actually trying to do is to have control over the Indian Ocean. China is building its military base along the Indian Ocean. So this is called as string of pearls. Okay, so this was also something for India to feel insecure about. So next, as a counter to BRI, as a counter to CPEC, as a counter to the string of pearls. Okay, so what did India do? India came out with a strategic partnership called as Quad, which involves India, Australia, Japan, and USA. So these 4 countries came together. And they formed an organization called as Quad, which is a military organization. And they pretend it is also called as Asian NATO. Okay, so their basic need, their basic objective of finding Quad was to counter the Chinese predatory economics and also to counter the Chinese dominance in Asia. Disputes, the border disputes at Doklam. Okay, border dispute at Doklam Plateau near Sikkim, Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh, and also the Pangong Tso, okay, that happened recently in Jammu Kashmir. So all these are the very strategically important places for India's internal security and also the national security. And these are the places where the China and India have the border disputes. And at the UNSC, as China is a permanent member of the UNSC and China is consistently opposing the India's entry into the permanent membership, that is P5. And China is also opposing the reformation of the United Nations Security Council. China doesn't want to name any Pakistani terrorist as a United Nations backed organization. So United Nations usually names these terrorist organizations or the terrorist individuals, and China usually what it does is whenever there's a proposal in the United Nations Security Council to name a particular person as a terrorist in the United Nations, the China vetoes this. Okay, because China is having a very deep connection with Pakistan. So these are some of the things that the China is doing at an international level so that India can be cornered. Finally, very recently China came out with a political map. Where it included both Aksai Chin area, okay, and also the Arunachal Pradesh into the political map of China. Okay, and when China came out with this particular map, the Indian authorities and the Indian High Commission and also the Indian government had a very serious and a very hard words towards China. And China came out with a reply and said, see, this is a very common thing that happens on a yearly basis. So India should not be escalating this matter. So that's what China replied to its political map. So if you look at these are the very recent and the most important disputes between India and China. So if you look at this is the map that I'm talking about, where China has included Jammu Kashmir, and also here if you look at, it has included the Arunachal Pradesh also. Okay, so these are some of the disputes between India and China. So this video was brought to you by the Legacy IAS Academy. Have a nice day. If you have liked the video, hit the like button and press the bell icon to get all the latest updates from the Legacy IAS Academy. Have a nice day.